So first of all, we have to recapitulate where we're up to in the story. And where is that? First of all, we have the apprentice, and he's living with his mother. Uh, he's the son of the widow, which we then made reference to Mani, that this is an indication, this is like a heads up to that this story has to do with Manichaean initiation. So at the beginning, we have the apprentice. He's living with his widowed mother, and she's struggling to find any, they are struggling to find any means of survival. And so she then says, you need to go and become the apprentice of the blacksmith, to go into his service and to become his apprentice. And then there's the warning that 7 people have previously tried to become apprentices of the blacksmith, and all of them have failed and have died because the tests are so severe. Now, why we got Ming the Merciless and his lovely daughter behind me? Because, and in the preview to this one, we were also identifying Ming and his lovely daughter Aurora. And Ming here is a representative of the blacksmith, and the whole world of Mongo, of an alternative, another world that Flash and Hans Zarkov and Dale Arden have to leave the Earth and fly to Mongo, and then they meet Ming. And then there's the whole story with Ming and his daughter Aurora. And very much this is mirroring what happens with the blacksmith and the apprentice. So the apprentice goes into the care of the blacksmith, and it's a process of slowly the apprentice awakening to just what is the character of the blacksmith, what is this person that he's dealing with. Then, if again, to recapitulate, we have the 3 tests that the apprentice has to show. He has to show he is stark, geschickt, and mutig. He's strong, he's dexterous, he's skillful, and he's courageous. Okay, that's 4 things. Dexterous, I mean, who says that? He's skillful. He's able to be skillful here with his thinking. So we've got the human being divided into 3 parts: a thinking part, a feeling part, and a willing part. And the first, he throws the anvil out. He shows that he's able to think with the 7 powers, these 7 astral powers of the astral planets. Secondly, he has to show that he can take all the threads of a web and roll them into a ball. And here we're talking about, can we bring all the knowledge that we've studied of the esoteric, but can we bring that and form our character with it? So if he can do that, and if the apprentice, if the person looking for initiation can reach this point where he can very carefully imagine how much care has to go into taking threads back of a spider's web without breaking one of those strands. It's an imagination for how can we bring every little resolve of thinking into our daily habitual life to form our character. And if he has shown that he has an awareness of what this means, then he can effectively pass this test. So this is the second test. The first is throwing the anvil to show his strength of esoteric knowledge. The second is, can he weave that into his etheric character as he's developing on the path? And thirdly, he has to, in a moment of great presence of mind, he has to be able to take the wolf, cut off his paws on the anvil, and throw the wolf into the fire. Now, this is what where we were up to last time. And then we spoke about how the apprentice is then taken into the care of the blacksmith. And immediately these tests transform into a deeper vision of what's spiritually going on. And it's at this point that the apprentice says, I want to find out with whom I am dealing. And this is when we get a deeper insight into who the blacksmith is, why he's living and working with a huge wolf the size of a horse, which would normally raise, I think, anyone's a few questions for anyone. And then we then see how the blacksmith, under the light of the moon, transforms himself into an otter. And we then see how he meets, we see his meeting with the snake goddess, and they come together in the river. And this is here depicted with Ming and his daughter Aurora. So hopefully that's got over the first 5 minutes and kept some of you still watching. But here we're going on to, I'm going to read where we're up to now. This is where I'm going to share the screen so we can read along. This is where we were up to before. So we had to, this is where he speaks to his mother, and this is where he passes the tests. And this is where we got up to last time. So the apprentice said goodbye to his mother and pretended to leave, but he hid himself secretly in a straw barn near the house of the Pont de Pîle blacksmith, where he could see and hear everything without being seen or heard. At sunset, the blacksmith of Pont de Pîle closed his workshop, but the apprentice did not trust him. He kept his eyes and ears open. When the stars showed the 11th hour, the blacksmith of Pont de Pîle very quietly opened the door of his house and looked around to see if no one was watching him. Then he imitated the sound of the cricket. Cree, cree, cree. Come, my daughter, come, snake queen. Cree, cree, cree. Father, here I am. The snake queen was long and fat as a sack of grain and wore a black lily flower on her head. The father and daughter caressed each other and covered each other with kisses. Well, father, have you an apprentice? Child, in 3 days I will have one. He is the son of a widow from Lakota. He is strong, skillful, and brave. Father, I have seen him. I love him. This is where we were up to previously. And this is also, this reference to the snake goddess is well known over in the East. So this is an example from Bengal. And it's nice here. I think it's nice how we've got the different animals also figuring in this, the iconography of the whole image here, and she's holding here the scepter and has the 8 arms. And I'm not going to go into what the relation is between this snake goddess and the snake goddess in that appears here in the story, except to point out the link here between the Occident and the Orient, and how this wisdom, this spiritual wisdom that is woven into this story, is also about the story of how we move from paganism over into an esoteric Christianity. So you'll see that this is, in many ways, the blacksmith is a very pagan figure that we are confronted with at the beginning. But this is no tale of morality in that sense, but they are all the way through, they're appealing to the goodness of the Virgin Mary. And so it's rooted in that European understanding of the religious background to the story. But the story itself, the power and the characters in the story, are appealing to our deep archetypal understanding of what these things are. And you could go into all of the different arms and iconography and weapons and figures that are represented in this, and come deeper into this character of the snake goddess. But rather than go into that an academic appreciation, I'd rather just look at how we can feel into this image, this of the snake goddess. And here we see her very lovelily from the film Flash Gordon, where she's very seducing. And perhaps some people know the scene where Aurora seduces Flash on the flight to Phrygia, which is a particularly striking scene for a young boy of 12 or 13 when you first watch this. And this is and then Ming always looking over, and it's this path, the path of the initiate is also the path of Flash Gordon, of course, on this, through this parallel world that he finds himself in. So all of these things I'm bringing in relation to this Manichaean path of initiation. Now, why Manichaean? Well, we spoke last time of how the initiation of Mani is a deeper level as the initiation of Christian Rosenkreuz. Now, how do we understand this when we say a deeper level? Well, the first level, this calling of Christian Rosenkreuz to devote our lives to the study of esoterics, this is like a basis that is needed before one understands what it means to start to strive or to indeed achieve the initiation of Mani. And Rudolf Steiner speaks of the initiation of Mani as how light is woven into darkness. And it's an understanding of how we work with evil. And unless one has been through this in some way in life through experience, it's very difficult to describe some of the complexity of what it means to take on evil into one's path and to so transform it that you can then bring light down into it. And it's one of the mysteries of the future, which Steiner speaks of in preparation for the sixth epoch, which comes out after ours, that we are preparing even now for that time, and especially now when we see so many of the effects of the counter, what Steiner calls the resistant powers or the counter powers, because evil can be a very emotive word, but what is evil except something that can inspire us and against which we can develop the good? So, as is often quoted in anthroposophical circles, is I can't remember the exact quote, but from Goethe, where evil is a misplaced good. And if we understand this, that challenges come into our lives so that we can develop certain qualities, that we can develop certain spiritual qualities in this challenge of more deeply understanding and integrating all of the spiritual hierarchies into our bodies. But this has to be done through this challenge. It can't, if we just drift and float into these experiences, we're not doing it consciously. So the path of ringing, of wrestling, of digesting esoteric truths by bringing them into our lives. This is what this path of money is all about. So there are three interesting words here: meekness, long-suffering, and forbearance. And they're words that we don't have such easy access to. Meekness. Where in life today do we need this meekness? It's not a quality that is going to find itself very highly valued in the systems that we have. Forbearance and long suffering. Again, these are things that are not highly valued in our society. Maybe they're things that we perhaps can only learn through some of our relationships, through some of our karmic connections. But I think you'll find in many areas that care work or long-suffering patience is something has been pushed very far down the end of how our economies and societies are shaped. And there was something I found very interesting in relation to this. I'm just going to bring back this image here. And just to think about this image, first of all, as the snake goddess. So we have a path here whereby firstly the apprentice has killed and burnt the wolf. Secondly, he's observed the blacksmith as he's transformed into an otter. And so we have the first part, when he's passed these tests and he's defeated and killed the wolf. Secondly, he's transforming in this water element and becoming one with the body of the otter. Now, when the blacksmith has done this, he's then meeting Aurora, the snake goddess, in the river. So we've got these different half animal, half human figures, and it's an appeal, I think in many ways here, to shamanistic wisdom, to the ability to shapeshift, to transform oneself into an animal. You could also think of all of the kind of magical implications or magical overtones of what we're seeing here. It's all looking very not like the church. Yeah, it's very sparkly, it's very gold, it's very all feeling very, very pagan. And the description here is that everything is taking place under the moonlight. And then I think it's very distinctive how we get this sense that the apprentice is watching all of this. He's hidden. He's hidden, watching the whole transformation of the blacksmith into the otter, and then this kind of incestuous scene in the river. And I think it's an important experience here to actually feel into the character of the apprentice and to sense that he's kind of a very objective observer of all this. He's kind of watching. He's even come along with some bread and some wine from his mother. She's like made him a little pat lunch, and he's just watching. He's this position of the observer, of the objective observer, just watching as things unfold. And indeed, when they start talking about himself, when they start referring to his own fate. Now, all of this, I think, is very, very important for understanding how this growing awareness of the spiritual world means that we are subjectively going this path, but we're finding more and more that we are, let's say, observed. We can start to feel how the spiritual is taking an interest in us, and there's like a reciprocity, there's a kind of watching. I think this is very, before we go over to that, I think it's very nicely depicted here. You see how Ming and Aurora, this view, look at their eyes. This gaze, a kind of desire, a kind of entrancement, looking at Flash, looking at the newcomer to their kingdom of Mongo, and also something quite threatening. Yeah, that's the other element here. So we have desire, a sense of impending threat, and this observation of the newcomer in this new world. So this is where we come up to the next part. And they've spoken here about how the Snake Queen would like to have the apprentice for her husband. She says, I want him, I love him. All right, my child, I will marry you off when he's old enough to do so. Now go. Midnight is near, and I have high time to get ready. The Queen of Serpents went. Then the blacksmith of Pont de Pîle went to the bank of the Gers River in a meadow lined with ash trees, poplars, and willows. The apprentice had crawled out from the pile of straw. He quietly, silently followed his master and hid behind the trees. The blacksmith of Pont de Pîle stripped naked as a worm and hid his clothes in a hollow willow. Then he stripped off his skin from head to feet and appeared as a great otter. I will hide my human skin, he said. If I do not find it again to put on at daybreak, I would have to remain an otter forever. He hid his human skin in a hollow willow and jumped into the gurse just as the stars showed midnight. The apprentice saw him swim, dive to the bottom of the water, and come back with a carp or an eel in his mouth, which he ate in the moonlight. Mein Meister ist verflucht, sich jeden Abend in ein Otter zu verwandeln, von Mitternacht bis Tagesanbruch. Alles das ist gut zu wissen, aber man darf es nicht sagen. My master is cursed every evening to change into an otter between midnight and dawn. All of this is good to know, but one mustn't say anything. These are two images of snake goddesses, from one, I think, from South America, the other one from India, just showing this kind of archetype across the world. So it went on until the day dawned. Then the blacksmith of Pont de Pîle got out of the water, put on his human skin and clothes again, and returned home without suspecting that he had been watched. The apprentice hid again in his pile of straw. During 2 more nights, he saw and heard the same things he had seen and heard the first night. Well, he said, my master is the father of the Snake Queen. Every night she comes to see him and talk to him. The Snake Queen is in love with me and wants to marry me when I am old enough to do so. My master is cursed to turn into an otter every night from midnight until daybreak. All this is good to know, but it must not be told. Is this not this archaic, this ancient warning of not to speak of the mysteries, of what one has seen, of the spiritual, of what one has seen in one's own spiritual experience? What does this mean? All this is good to know, but it must not be told. Perhaps it's because the apprentice has to go through the whole path before he can fully bring it down into his will. And again, this is a very nice passage if you read through to see how objectively everything is spelt out here, how everything that the apprentice sees and observes, it's as if he's making notes. He's holding himself back. He's not speaking of it. He's not creating yet with it because he's observing, he's watching. He needs to know with whom he is dealing. He needs to know who the blacksmith is and who the snake goddess is, because in daylight he wouldn't have known these things. That's why he has to hide himself. He has to go on a path of study. He has to investigate, which all the tests before had prepared for him to do. Now, the other aspect is that this blacksmith and the snake goddess are aspects of the apprentice himself. On the morning of the 3rd day, the apprentice entered the workshop like a stupid person who has seen and heard nothing. Good day, master. I want to start my apprenticeship. So the apprenticeship began. At the age of 15, the apprentice could already do more than the master, but he pretended not to be so skilled, for he feared to make the blacksmith of Pont de Pîle envious. One evening, the master said to the apprentice, listen, in 3 months, the Marquis of Firmacon will marry his eldest daughter to the king of the Sea Islands, The bride needs a lot of jewelry. I have received the order to do so. Tomorrow morning you will travel ahead and take the tools with you. In the castle of Lagarde, you will not lack gold and silver, nor diamonds and precious stones. Forge and straighten as best you can. Do the rougher part of the work. A month before the wedding, I will be there to see if everything is going well, and I will complete a lot of things that you will never be able to work. Meister, ich gehöre euch. Master, I obey you. The next day, early in the morning, the apprentice came to the castle of Lagarde with his tools. Immediately after breakfast, he set to work. He did not lack gold and silver, nor diamonds and precious stones. O master, he thought, the time is near when thou shalt know if there be indeed a multitude of things which I shall never be able to work. And the apprentice forged gold and silver. He set up diamonds and precious stones. Never before did one see so many such beautiful rings, necklaces, and earrings, and never again will one see such. Master and servants in the castle of Lagarde praised the apprentice unceasingly, with the exception of the youngest daughter of the Marquis of Fimacon, a little maiden who was beautiful as day and chaste as a saint. Meanwhile, she watched the apprentice work from morning to night. Now, isn't this fascinating? That we have what immediately happens after the first observation of the apprentice is we come into a new observing position of the maiden who watches intently everything that the apprentice is doing. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this here. So I'll move on to, but this is very nice anyway. So this elemental, the evocation, this is from Midsummer Night's Dream, from a painting by Fitzgerald. And it's a very nice depiction. You've got the marriage of Titiana and Oberon, king of the fairies. And you even have in the pond on the original painting, I'll see if I can get the original painting. And of course, the whole play, Midsummer Night's Dream, is a delving, a deepening into how the elemental world plays tricks on the central characters and how their destinies are woven into this into the play. So anyway, if you want to, you can look this up for yourself. But in this, you have down here, you can just about see the head. Yeah. Is this almost to an exact description, the same description as the snake goddess. She's rising out of the river here underneath. So again, it's again a heads up to how many of these archetypes and energies, elemental beings of nature, are realities which are finding their way into depiction in the arts, in this story, because they're realities of the spiritual path as we come to perceive how we're interwoven with the elemental worlds around us and how this is a necessity for us to see how different parts of us are awakening as we grow in our understanding and perception of the spiritual world, and how the spiritual world is then perceiving us. So it's this reciprocity that I think is very interesting and reflected in the story. So going back to, I'd just like to go back to Ming here, because Ming, the whole question of the world that we're in and how Flash has to leave the Earth. There's all the warnings on the news of hail, end of the world, apocalypse. And it's only through these crises that Flash can then go to this other world. And this is also depicted all the way through the story of Goldfoot. And I think it's a deeper meditation on the world that we live in, the neoliberal capitalist world that we've created in the last hundreds of years, but especially with this time when Steiner speaks of the fall of the spirits of darkness at the end of the age of Mikhail, at the end of the 19th century. He speaks of how mankind as a whole steps over the threshold to the spiritual world. And part of this is understanding how the world is really not as we are sold and packaged it. And I think it's a very interesting meditation on this. All of these science fiction depictions are looking at this from different angles, different facets. And I was reading recently about the different class systems within the neoliberal order, and how it's often washed over and made much it's much simplified into an elite or a working class and underclass, but it's very much 6 classes that I was reading of, and I'll put the book in the link. 6 classes, from the working class to these are all Marxist references, to the proletariat, the petty bourgeoisie. And the writer that was talking of the petty bourgeoisie and I'll forget it. I'm going to cut that bit out.